Hello, geeks. Welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast about all geeky aspects of software delivery, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Vilela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today, I have Michael Levan. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really excited to have you on. Where are you calling from today?
I am in New Jersey. Yeah,
Ooh, fellow
U.S.
East Coaster. Yay.
I know. Yeah, I'm actually I'm in the process of thinking about getting out of here.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, maybe Tampa or Austin. Those have been the
Oh, so
two.
somewhere warm.
Yeah. Those have been the two spots that I've been really thinking about lately.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've never been to Austin, but I always hear good things about Austin, especially the food scene.
Yes, yeah, I feel like I hear that a lot, especially on like podcasts and stuff. Like I'll be listening to just random podcasts. And people will be talking about how great the food is out there. A lot of barbecue, obviously, America and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of barbecue and that type of food.
I am down for the barbecue.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, we will be starting off with our lightning round questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First question: are you a lefty or a righty?
Righty.
Okay. Do you prefer iPhone or Android?
I think iPhone because I've just been using it for so long. But I would argue though that argue with myself that about twice a year I think about switching to
Oh,
Android.
yeah.
But it's just I feel like I'm just so used to the ecosystem at this point. And despite being an engineer, I'm not like super interested in consumer technology. I just want stuff that just works. And I feel like at least back in the day with Android, it was like you had to kind of play around with things to make it work in a particular way. Whereas with iPhone, it's just I open it up and I can use the stuff that I need to use, and that's it. So
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. I do like the everything works, everything's nicely integrated, it plays well nice. And
yes.
the folks who love Android, I think one of the reasons they love it is, oh, you can configure everything. And my thought is like, but I don't want to, like,
No, yeah, I'm doing that 90% of my day. I
right?
just don't want to do it in my personal time either.
Yeah, it's not fun to me. It was fun, like, I don't
Years
know, a
ago.
long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, when I
yeah,
was much
yeah.
younger.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, like I remember like I had Android phones and I was jailbreaking them, and then I had like the Windows phones when they were popular for
Oh,
3
yeah.
minutes, and then, yeah, and then it was like eventually I just had to switch back and I just wanted something that just worked.
Yes, I am with you on that. Okay, similar vein, do you prefer Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Mac, but there are certain things that are irritating me that I'm thinking about going back to Windows. Like for example, I can't tell you how many times I build a Docker image, then I try to deploy it to a particular place, and I'm like, why isn't this working? And then I'm like, oh, that's right, because I'm building on ARM.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
there's
I've had that.
yeah, and then there's even like so I'm really into like the security realm and stuff, and there are certain things that I can't do. So, like for example, there's this website called Vuln Hub, which is awesome. It's literally just a whole bunch of AMIs that are built with vulnerability. So, like, let's say you want to test or practice something from like a pen testing perspective,
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
download these AMIs and then you can like
Oh,
spin them up in like VMware Player or VirtualBox or like whatever you're using for your Type One hypervisor. But they're not ARM based, like
yes.
I can't use them on my Mac, and I have like my Windows box back there,
Yeah.
which I can do it on, but I'm like, it's just a pain. Or like let's say like I'm speaking at a conference or something, it's like I want to demo something, but I can't because of this. I just yeah, I've been thinking about going back to Mac, which would be the first or Mac Windows, which will be the first time in like 6 7 years.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
Yeah, you make a very good point with the Docker images and ARM. Like, that has caused me so much grief
yeah,
recently.
it's a pain.
Like, I can't even tell you. And then also, like, I don't know if this is still true. I haven't checked for a while, but I think like you can run VirtualBox on M1 Macs,
You
on
can.
Silicon Maps.
Yeah, yeah. No, you totally can. Yeah, like even
You
like I
can
have
now?
I have VMware Fusion even on it right now because I'll like I have a Kali VM, but Kali is like a
Yeah.
pen testing distro that I'll run locally and stuff because it's not my daily driver. But like I can run those VMs, but if anything's built with AMD base 64 or whatever, like if it's all about the architecture. So like even though like
Right.
the whatever the extension is for VMs, right? That AMI, you can
Yeah.
exist. You could download it and stuff, but then it'll say, "Oh, you can't run it because your architecture." And you're like, "Yeah, I would." Apple should have like given an option, like go Intel or go ARM. But yeah, so
I definitely feel your frustration on that one.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, next question. What's your favorite programming language?
I'm comfortable in Go, but it depends on the use case, right? So like programming languages to me are really nothing more than a tool to get a job done.
Yeah.
So like I'll use Go just because I enjoy it and I'm comfy in it. But from like a security perspective, a lot of Python and PowerShell, because those are like the two primary like scripting based languages. And from a security perspective, the majority, whether you're doing blue teaming, red teaming, purple, AppSec, CloudSec, whatever, the majority of the time you're writing automation with your code.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense to go the Python or the PowerShell route. I could do it in Go, but it's like
Yeah.
nobody else is really doing it. So then it won't work in certain scenarios or people won't be comfortable with it in certain scenarios. So
Oh, cool. That's really interesting.
yeah, yeah, I love Go. I started out PowerShell, Python. I moved to Go years ago. I
Uh-huh.
teach like Go training, so like I'll teach live trainings teaching people Go. So like I'm super comfy in that realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Python or PowerShell, it's pretty much the way to go from a security standpoint.
Good to know.
You know.
All right. Next question. Do you prefer dev or ops?
Hmm, which one? I don't know. I'm I think because of the way that my brain works, if I had to choose to just do one, it would be development. Because I'm very logistical, left side of the brain. Like
Mhm.
I like research and I like logistical based jobs. So I think programming gives me more of that. And I've done both. Like I started out my career in systems administration and help desk and all that. Around the
Yeah.
middle of my career, I moved to software development. And then I just found myself somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, platform SRE, DevOps, whatever title is catchy nowadays. So like I've done kind of a little bit of everything, and I've played with all different pieces of technology, but what I will say is like I don't think I can do one without the other anymore. Like I wouldn't be a good developer if I didn't understand infrastructure, and I wouldn't be good at infrastructure and systems and networks and containerization and Kubernetes if I didn't understand development. So there's I feel like the lines are so blurred in today's world that you really need both. But yeah, if I
Yeah.
had to choose like what I was gonna do, probably like writing code.
Awesome. And I love what you said there about like really the lines blurring and having to understand both because I so agree with you. And um I've had arguments with people over this because in the past, like when I was managing teams and I was hiring folks for my team, like um I was hiring developers for my team, but I needed them to like have an understanding also of like the infrastructure side of things, like how to containerize your
Right.
applications. And I was really surprised by the number of like resumes that I got, or even like, if they made it to the interview process, of people who had no experience containerizing their own applications. And I'm like, but aren't you like remotely curious as to how that works? I don't know.
They're
Like
not,
for
that's the
me, it
problem.
just yeah, it's just so
Yeah.
surprising because for me, it's like, of course you're going to learn how to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's that curiosity is drastically important, especially in today's world. So like tech is weird. Like it has gone from being this like really particular career for nerdy people. right? And then it kind of went mainstream. Like tech now
Mhm.
is very much like tech is buzzy and it's trendy and it's like people like it because it's cool. And like I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
when tech became cool, but it's cool now. But what ended up happening was so many people uh so many people got into it because it was cool and because it was trendy and all this stuff, right? Which is okay. But the problem is that those people very rarely are putting in the same amount of work and effort that like engineers were putting in before it was cool and trendy, and the interest isn't there, and that's
Mhm.
why and hot take, people may be irritated about to people may get irritated because I'm saying this, but like I think that's also a big problem of like why people are having such a hard time finding and getting jobs. And look, I understand there's been like over 300,000 layoffs between, the large tech companies. I'm not dismissing that. But what I also do know is like I have friends recently that have gotten laid off, and within 3 to 4 weeks, they had 4 job offers, because they're very, very good at what they do. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's not because they're geniuses, but it's because they are very interested and like they want to know the way things work and how they work and how
Yes.
they come together. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult to find a job.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
so agree with you because I honestly think that's like the heart and soul of tech
it
is
is.
being curious,
Yeah.
and curious enough to learn new things because
Mm.
tech moves so fast that if you don't learn new things, then you're like outdated.
100%. Yeah, yeah. And it makes things really weird when you're self-employed. Like I'm self-employed, and you kind of have to like pick a direction, I think, at this point where it's like, are you going to be trendy or are you going to be more educational based?
Mhm.
Like my content is very educational based. It's very
Mhm.
like I'm going to show you how to do a thing.
Yeah,
I'm it this is just not my personality. I'm just not the guy that's like putting on the YouTube voice and like
yeah,
doing the camera angles and this. It's not me. It's never been
yeah,
me. If I did it, it would be disingenuous.
yeah, yeah,
But in that realm, if you take that route, and you're doing like vendor content and stuff, which I do vendor content, I just don't do that type of vendor content. You could pull in 400, 500,000 a year USD. Like it's very
yeah.
manageable and reasonable to do that.
Wow.
But then you got to take but then if you do the educational route, like I backed off from that and I went the
Yeah.
educational route, and you're not making that in the educational route. But that education, the reason why I'm saying all this is because that
Mhm.
educational route, if you keep that level of engineering mindset, it will make your life easier to get jobs because you'll be curious and because you'll be interested in what you're kind of doing, versus the people that if you're just turning on the camera and just talking about stuff, it's fine and there's a place for that, but it's also going to be very, very difficult to find a job in tech now because of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Do you prefer JSON or YAML?
Oh, neither. It's not an option.
I mean, it's an option.
So I guess
Tell me why
YAML.
you like neither.
Yeah. So it I guess I would, go with YAML because in the Kubernetes realm, when I'm like just so invested and embedded in the Kubernetes realm at this point, out of the box, you can use JSON and YAML natively with Kubernetes, but you just 1000% of the time, you're always going to see examples in YAML. You're never
Yeah,
going to see them in JSON, but natively, you can use both.
so
Um,
true.
I think, in all seriousness, I think I would choose probably YAML. I think JSON is like the more you add to it, the more convoluted it is. Hence why Microsoft switched from ARM templates to Bicep, because it was just people were looking at ARM templates and it was like there's a lot happening here, and it's really easy to misconfigure. And I think that's why I would choose YAML. I think with JSON, it's just far easier to misconfigure your environment with JSON as it gets longer than with YAML.
Yeah, I agree. I find YAML a lot more legible.
Yeah.
I know like people get really like annoyed by the spaces thing. I mean, me too. But I it's so much more legible compared to JSON. I
Yeah.
just it's like just a blob of characters when I look at.
Yeah.
at JSON, and yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And
It's always funny to like the tabs and spaces thing. I don't know if like if you watch the show Silicon Valley
oh yes, actually,
on
that's my next
HBO.
question.
Yeah. I I love when Richard, like I forget the chick that he was dating, but like
Yeah,
she's using space and he freaks out and has to leave. Oh, it's so freaking funny.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, I love that. Like that one little like scene is just magic, magic.
So funny. So funny.
And that's perfect because my next question is, do you prefer tabs or spaces?
Oh, you know what I prefer? I prefer clicking Option Shift F in VS Code because it just does it for me. I don't have to like worry about like the tabs and spaces with like the auto formatting in VS Code anymore. But yeah, I think spaces, because sometimes with YAML, it's like, so a tab is 4 spaces, I think, right? But with
Yeah,
YAML, like sometimes you can only do two, like two
yeah,
spaces. So like then it like screws up the formatting, and but even if the formatting is messed up anyways, it's just like Command Shift F or Option Shift F, whatever it is, and then it like formats everything. So it's less of a hassle nowadays. But I think spaces.
there you go. Hot tip on formatting. Yeah, I actually
Yeah.
switched from spaces, sorry, from tabs to spaces
Yeah.
because of that with the formatting in YAML, where I I think it defaulted to like the tab, as you said, being four spaces, and then
Yeah.
I like open YAML documents that was like two. I'm like,
Yeah.
ah, god damn it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that causes
Yeah.
all sorts of
And the nice thing too with like with VS Code and pretty much any IDE at this point is like when if I'm on a line and if I hit enter, like it will put me where I should be going.
yeah,
And so it's kind of like you really don't have to think about it anymore at this point, which is nice. Yeah, because that's and but it was more important like years ago. Like there were languages like whether you were using garbage collection or not, that it was like spaces would take up more memory once you were compiled. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that really. I don't know if it matters anymore. I haven't ran a benchmark against that in like 10 years, so I wouldn't know if it still matters. But yeah, it's still fun to talk about though.
yeah, totally. It always provides for some like very interesting conversation every
Yes,
time.
100%.
Okay, next question. Do you prefer to consume content through video or text?
If I'm trying to do something quick, video. But I like reading. So one of my mental health things is 30 minutes a day. I at least 30 minutes a day I carve
Yeah.
out to read. And it's always a technical based book. Like I'm always reading something about a new practice or a new something in a language or a certification thing or whatever. Like I'm always reading stuff. So
What are you currently reading then?
what am I currently let me pull up my Kindle app because I'm reading like 4 different things at the moment.
Ooh,
And I want to make sure I have the titles correct. Um, so one thing that I'm reading, because for like security-based contracts, like government-based contracts and DoD-based contracts, I need certain CompTIA certifications. So Pentest Plus by CompTIA, currently going through that. 'Cause again, it's needed for like DoD contracts and stuff. Um, this is a really awesome book. Tanya Jajanka, you're familiar with her, the
no.
We Hack Purple. She has like some really awesome content. She wrote a book called Alice and Bob Learn Application Security.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a really cool one.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. And then Black Hat Python is another really good one. But I'm always bouncing back and forth, honestly. So one thing that I do as well, and I do this because I apparently enjoy pain, where I'll read like 3 to 5 books at a time, and then I'll
Yeah.
forget like 70% of it. So then I just keep going back and reading the same thing over and over again. So yeah, it's fun. So that's a good
I hate
sign.
it when that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, final question. What is your superpower?
Oh God. Getting annoyed. No. I think that I am really I'm open to more and more information. And I think that's what I've always been really good at. Like even like in the beginning and in the middle of my career, like I've walked into job interviews where I didn't know 90% of what they were talking about, but I
Yeah.
let them know, like, I'll figure it out. And they're like, all right, can you figure it out in 2 weeks before the job starts? And I'm like, yep. And I'll sit there and like throw myself into things for weeks and weeks and weeks to figure out how stuff works. Again, maybe it goes back to the enjoyment of pain or just the enjoyment of learning. I don't really know exactly what it is, but yeah, I'm not like out of the box smart, right? Like I wasn't like an A student in school and stuff. And, I don't have a fancy degree or anything. But I'm just really good at like taking a problem and figuring it out. It may take me longer than other times. It may throw me down, a bottle of bourbon, but at some point I will figure it out because I'll just keep kind of hammering it out
Yeah.
until I fully understand what's happening.
That is such a great superpower, and I think it's such an important one for working in tech is just,
Yeah,
like, the perseverance and as you said, like, the openness. Because I think, one thing that I've experienced in the workplace in the past is, being on a team and folks being asked to, like, do something, and they're like, "But I don't know how to do that."
I know.
And, passing the buck to someone else because they didn't wanna be bothered rather than,
Yep.
"Oh, this is, like, a really cool learning experience, and you might get something out of it."
100%. Yeah. I mean, there's this curiosity aspect of it as well, but then there's also like the life aspect. Like I'm a
Mhm.
firm believer that like what you've gone through in life will kind of dictate how much pain you're able to take, right? And
Mm,
and
yeah,
that's why people don't like want to go out and learn this and that and this and that because people like to be comfortable, right?
yeah,
Like, they don't like to not be, they don't like to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
yeah,
And that's always been something that I've been able to be decent enough at where like I'm okay with being uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely a really good skill to have, and
Yeah.
it makes me think too to, like, especially, like, in so many organizations when they're doing, digital transformations, agile transformations, DevOps transformations, where you're basically asking your employees to, like, change the way that they work.
Yeah.
And you see so much resistance. Like, I worked at a bank for many years and I was part of a massive, like, DevOps transformation. And it was funny that we had I feel like we had the dev part figured out, like, we had the, like, really
Yeah.
good CI/CD pipelines, but the hardest part was actually getting the delivery to really, like, embrace those DevOps principles. So it was more like we got the CI, it was the CD that
Right.
was really holding us back because the folks who worked in ops were like, I don't wanna learn this new thing,
Yeah. Thousand
which
percent.
was and it was a detriment to them, but also to the organization because they
Yep.
couldn't move forward.
And that's still how it is. I mean, that's why if you're a good engineer, you can pretty much go and name your price at an
Mhm.
organization. Like if,
Yeah.
if depending on where well, I would argue that this shouldn't even matter, but it does for whatever reason. Like depending on where you are in the world, like you should be able to name your price, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you're like, hey, I should be making 220 a year, and you're that good, you
Yeah.
could go and you can name that price.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the big, again, going back to what we were talking about before, like that's the differentiator, right? Between
Yeah.
like, are you going to get a job or are you going to be laid off for 3, 4 years?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of our lightning round questions. So thank you for playing. And I wanted to get now into the meaty bits. And before we started recording, we were talking about how you do a bunch of security work, which you alluded to also in the lightning round questions. So first question is, what got you interested in security in the first place?
Yeah. So I've been really, and for anybody that like takes a look at my content or sees what I've been doing over the years, I've been always really focused in the Kubernetes realm.
Hmm.
um, I have written books on Kubernetes. I've spoken at conferences on Kubernetes, hundreds of blogs, hundreds of videos, um, podcasts, everything. And I kind of reached a point where, so the way that my for better or for worse. The way that my brain works is if I feel like I don't have a purpose,
Yeah.
and my purpose is always career related, it always has been, just because the way I
Mhm.
was raised and my life and all these different things. If I'm not doing something that's really hard, I'm like drastically depressed. Like I've had, mental health issues and all these different things. And it usually comes back to because I'm not challenged.
Mhm.
So I chose security because after I like stayed in Kubernetes for years, and
Yeah.
the thing was in the Kubernetes realm now, like you could give me any topic to talk about, to go speak at a conference, to write a book on, and like I don't really have to do any research. Like I don't really have to do
Yeah.
any prep. Like I've walked into conference talks with zero prep. Like because I just know it. Like I just because I was
Yeah.
focused in it for so long. So I wanted to my next challenge, I wanted to think about what can I do that's incredibly hard, that not a lot of people can do really well, and that is a constant growing pain. And I came across security.
Ah.
Yeah. So I was like, what's the most painful thing that I can work on right now? And that's
That
what I
was the
came up
answer.
with. That's what I came up with. Yep. 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 Yeah, and then for me, it wasn't even like, let me go blue team or red team. It was like, let me go application security, because
Yeah.
application security is arguably the one that like it seems like nobody can get right. So I
Yep.
was like, all right, let's do the thing that nobody can figure out. I'll go down that route. So
And
yeah,
there you are.
yeah, here I am.
I actually wanted to go back to something that you mentioned because I can
Sure.
so relate to it, where you said, not feeling challenged, led to you having, like, mental health issues,
Yeah.
because it was and I can so relate because I have found that, so I've gone between, manager and IC roles, in the past, and I realize that every time I'm in a management role, I'm depressed because I
Yep.
feel like I'm not doing something, like, cool and engaging,
Right.
and it's so interesting to meet someone else who has experienced something like that, and that it, like, it's validating in a way, like, it's yeah.
Stuff. It's so I can, I don't know how deep you want me to go here with these answers, but I've seen a lot of mental health issues like throughout my life. Like I grew up incredibly poor. Both of my parents were drug addicts and alcoholics. We were in apartments with bed bugs. We were in apartments where there were no bedrooms. It was a studio. Like I went through a good, nice chunk of my life where like I didn't have my own bedroom. Um, I've been like through like really bad times, and then I've
Yeah,
been to the point where I own my home and I drive the car that I want to drive. And I'm the money that I can make is more than I ever even thought possible. Right? I didn't go to
mhm,
college, none of it. Like college wasn't even an option because I just needed to start working.
yeah,
Um, so like I've seen everything that comes with growing up like that.
yeah.
I've had a lot of mental health issues, where I had a stroke due to depression, like
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of big things. Yeah, so like I've gone down the deepest, darkest mental health issues that you could possibly imagine. And the one thing that I found, and I did the yoga and the meditation and the medication and the several talking to several therapists and psychiatrists, and it's always fun to talk to psychiatrists and therapists when they're like, we don't know what's wrong, and you're like, oh, I guess I won the game of therapy, when you stump the therapist, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
I've done all of this, and what I found that brings me out of it, and this is just my personal opinion. This is
yeah,
going through again everything that I went through in my life, being in such a dark place where my body
yeah,
literally tried to shut itself down.
yeah,
Um, Medication, therapy, all this stuff. It's great to sprinkle on top,
Yeah.
But the only thing that's going to actually bring you out of it is figuring out what the underlying issue is. And
Yeah.
the majority of the time, the underlying issue is purpose.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
finding purpose in
Yeah,
life.
yeah, I agree. It's like you need to give yourself a mission, a
Right.
meaningful mission. Like whenever I feel like I've got like, okay, I have a goal, I'm like, I'm all in, even if it sounds like ridiculous and like I have no idea how I'm going to achieve it, but I'm like, I think it's achievable. And I think that's the other thing. Like, if you think it's achievable, even if it's hard, I think on the most part, it gets achieved.
100%. 100%. And I mean, that I think that's the same for anybody, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, it's like if you have a purpose, if you have a drive, if you have any of these things, you could sleep 3 hours a night and get up and go, right?
Hmm.
Your life could be however it is, but if you have this thing that you're driving towards, it will be exceptionally better for you than anything else, any medication, any therapy, anything. And I'm not telling everybody stop doing all that stuff. What I'm saying is you're not going to find the underlying cause of your issues with that, right? I didn't, right? Nobody that I know that's gone through it has. Everybody's got to find purpose. It's such a it's the most important. And your purpose could be your kids. Your purpose could be making sure you have a clean home. Your purpose could be being a digital nomad, right? And living
Hmm.
in different places every
Yeah.
year, every 6 months, whatever I don't care what it is, find it. That's going to be the
Yeah.
thing that's going to help you in life the most.
Yeah, it's the thing that gets you out of bed basically,
Yeah.
where you're, like,
Yeah.
excited to tackle the day. Like, I find, like, especially when I'm in the midst of solving a gnarly problem,
Mhm.
um, if, like, the previous day I made some sort of breakthrough
Mhm.
and, you know, the next day I wake up all excited
Mhm.
because I'm like, "I get to work on this some more." And I'll
Yep.
even, like, wake up before my alarm because, like, I can't stop thinking about it, and it so excites me and it so drives me.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. And usually no, not usually. I mean, 100% of the time, it's no financial gain. It's nothing external, right? It's
Yeah.
all intrinsic factors that make you get out of bed in the morning and go do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to, that's why all of these millionaires and billionaires, like, they don't have to do anything.
Yep, yep.
Anything. They could sit there in front of their TV and drink bourbon and eat pizza for the rest of their lives and do it incredibly comfortably
Oh,
in a
yeah.
in a in a in a s in a smooth 70-degree house. Like this, like, their life could be freaking awesome.
Cushy.
Um, yeah, but they don't do it like that because, like, they have to have some type of purpose because that's what drives you in life.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, I wanted to switch gears back to the security topic because there's a couple of things that I want to ask. First of all, you mentioned that you got into application security because, as you said, seldom like people get it right.
Right.
What do you like specifically? What is it that you think that people don't usually get right when it comes to application security?
The number one thing is you don't fully understand the underlying system.
Mm,
So, and I always say this, security is pretty easy. Like, the act of securing something is relatively straightforward, right? The hard part is understanding what you're securing. It's the same thing with writing code.
mhm.
I can take anybody off the street and teach them how to write a function and a method in a class. What I can't do is take anybody and teach them how to properly architect an application stack and get it done right and get it
Yeah,
deployed right. Same thing with security. I can teach anybody how to go use Burp Suite and how to spin up a Kali Linux box and play around with Metasploit and use code scanning and SAST tools and DAST tools and SCAD tools. And I can teach anybody how to do any of this stuff. But what I can't teach them is, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to run these tools and I'm going to use these tools. Now what? Oh, I found a
mhm.
vulnerability. Now what? Oh, there's
Yeah,
an issue in a library. Now what? What's the fix? How do
yeah,
I implement change? You can't teach everybody that. And I think that's why. And even if you go, you look on Reddit or you look on other forums, the number one question I would say in like the cybersecurity arena right now is, hey, I just graduated college and I want to go and do cybersecurity. No, you don't need to know what you're securing. You can't. Literally, by definition, you cannot secure what you do not know. Um, and I think that's the hardest part. The hardest part is not security. The hardest part is understanding the underlying system, network, application, container, whatever,
Yeah.
so well
Yeah.
that you know what it how it works inside and out. That's the really hard part of security.
Do you think that's one of those things that would come with experience?
100%. Yeah. That's why, you have like SOC style roles,
Mhm.
security operations center, right? Where pretty much their job is just like, oh, vulnerability came in, let me triage it and send it to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
You could do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anything more, defending systems, pen testing, red teaming, application security, like you cannot do this unless you understand what you are securing. So if you
Mhm.
have experience, like anybody that has 10, 20 years of infrastructure experience can go do system security. Anybody that's been a software engineer for 10, 20 years can go do AppSec. You just need to like learn the tools and the terminology, and there's a lot of terminology in the security space. I don't know why it's worse than cloud native. Uh,
Damn.
there's so much terminology, and I'm like, oh, why are we called? Like, can we just name these five things the way that they are and leave it at that? Yeah, it's so strange to me, but yeah, yeah. So yeah, like if you know something very very well, like if you know the underlying platform very very well, security is relatively straightforward.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, another question I want to ask. I remember when the DevOps movement
Hmm.
started gaining traction, and everyone's like shift left, and
Yeah,
then like shift left on security. Do
yeah.
you think that organizations are truly shifting left on security? And if not, why? Like, why do you suspect that they might not be?
No, I mean there are so many breaches all the time that like they're clearly not. Um, even like like the like people only so it security is very comparable to life, right? You only make a change in life if things go wrong.
Oh my
There's
god, so
yeah,
true.
nobody like very rarely do people do like preventative maintenance in
Yeah,
life,
yeah,
right? Like
absolutely.
if you go to the gym 5 days a week and you eat decently healthy, where let's say you eat, 3 meals a day and, 2 to 3 of those meals per week or just whatever you want, like it's pretty good preventative maintenance.
Yeah,
But the majority of people don't do preventative maintenance in life, and nor do they in security until something goes wrong. That's why like
yeah,
Microsoft now, like Microsoft has been releasing all this stuff where their engineers now supposedly, who knows if this is true, but they're not going to be judged just based on like code quality and stuff. Like they're going to be
mm.
judged based on security posture. Oh,
Oh, good. That's
interesting
important.
stuff. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, really interesting stuff. Um, so I think the shift left. So the shift left thing, right? Like if we break this down, and because it's so buzzy, but if we break it down, what's application security? What's AppSec? AppSec is securing the entire SDLC process
Yeah,
from the thought of this is going to be a thing to the idea to the libraries we're using to the language we're using to the deployment process. Shift left is around this whole DevSecOps thing, right?
yeah, yeah,
So if you ask somebody, what's DevSecOps? Securing the entire SDLC process.
yeah,
Why do we have three names for this? I have no idea. We have three names for the same exact thing. It's the same. There's no difference. If you take shift left, SDL, AppSec, and DevSecOps, it's literally all the same thing. There's no differentiation between these three things.
yeah,
So we unfortunately like have a lot of buzzies because look, I'm vendors got to make money, right? They got to
yeah,
make it
yeah.
somehow, right? And so they got to make stuff up that sounds cool so they can sell their products. I get it. Yeah, we all got to make money, but it just causes a lot of confusion, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I gotta say, I always found the term DevSecOps a little cringe, only because my thought is like, isn't security supposed to be baked into DevOps in the first place? So
Yeah,
every time I hear that, I'm like, oh,
yeah, yeah. And it's tough too, right? So it's like you could go and look at my LinkedIn posts, and I always like I don't know why. This is just society, I suppose. But like I'll create LinkedIn posts that are like really like have a lot of really good stuff in there.
yeah, yeah,
But I'll use terminology that people don't know, maybe like
yeah,
corporate teaming and pen testing and AppSec and stuff, and they don't get what I'm saying. So
yeah,
it doesn't really go anywhere.
yeah,
But then if I throw something, and I've tested this out and
yeah,
unfortunately proven it to be true. If I put DevSecOps in,
yeah.
gets a lot of traction. So it's the unfortunate reality of what the world that we live in right now, because that's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
what people know and understand. And these aren't people that are just marketing people. Like I talk
yeah,
to really, really solid engineers and they say DevSecOps. And the reason why they say it is because they're hearing it. The reason that they're hearing it is because marketing is incredible in
yeah,
in today's tech world. It's really good. Like some of these vendors are really solid with their marketing.
yeah,
And that's just what people know now. So it's like, you gotta do it. It's weird,
yeah.
but it is what it is.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. It is funny. The LinkedIn algorithm is
Oh,
always an interesting one to wrangle.
yeah, it's and you know what's so funny about it too? Like getting solid content out in the world, it sucks, but it's not about how good you are at something.
No.
It's really just about how good you are at phrasing things. And luckily, I've just been a writer for so long now
Yeah,
that it's like I've just kind of hit the nail on the head with it.
yeah,
But like I remember when I first became self-employed, I was like, I'm a good engineer. Everybody's gonna hire me.
yeah.
I found out the quick and hard way that that's not the way things work around. So yeah, it's really all about that verbiage for people.
Yeah, it's true, and seeming approachable and whatnot to folks. The other
Yeah.
thing, it's funny. I've had a couple of conversations with folks, especially around LinkedIn posts.
Mm.
And actually, my friend Hazel Weekly and I were talking about like, why is it that when I just I have these nice thought out LinkedIn posts, like they get like so traction, and then when I post something out of like emotional rage or shit post, it
Yeah.
gets traction. And then
Weird,
Hazel, like
right?
I think later that day, wrote a shit post about
Mm.
shit posting, and she's like, I got so much traction on this, more so than the other stuff, and it's like, oh my god, it just like proved what we were discussing.
I so I'll give you an example, right? As we're I'll take a look at this live.
Hmm.
So I'm looking at my LinkedIn post as we speak. Now I
Yeah,
put something together 2 hours ago. It
yeah,
literally did not get any likes and any comments. 379 impressions. That is awful. But it was a carousel explaining certain AppSec tools, why
yeah,
you would use them, and where to
yeah,
find them. Right? It got no traction, none. But then if I scroll down to where is this one? Oh, here we go. I wrote, networking is ridiculously important in Kubernetes. It's one of the core skills that all engineers need. There are a ton of different components: pod IPs, container IPs, DNS, firewalls, and a lot more. I highly recommend learning these things. This is pretty much nothing, right? Like I pretty much just said nothing in my post.
hmm.
111 likes, 10,000 impressions.
What?
Doesn't make any
Holy
sense,
crap!
right?
Holy crap!
Yeah, so it's a really like weird world that we live in where it's like you pretty much just say nothing and people are like sick. And then you say stuff that's important and people are like don't like that at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
And then especially
Yeah.
like when you have like this lovely, well-crafted post and there's like, hardly any impressions, hardly any likes, and it's like
Yes.
nobody loves me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, another question that I wanted to ask you around security is, there's the age-old battle between infosec and developers.
Mhm.
Um, what kinds what kinds of things are you seeing out in the wild with regards to this? Like, do you think it's getting any better, or what do you think is
Yeah.
kind of the main cause of this?
You know what's so ironic about this question too? I'm so happy that you brought this up because so oftentimes I argue with myself, right? For better or for worse, I just multiple personalities in here, and I have a lot of arguments and disagreements with everybody that's in here, and a lot of a lot of the developer security issues, right, are really all about well, it's everything that we know. This security person told me I have to change this, and it's going to break this, and it doesn't work with this, right? This is the security thing that we all know.
Mm-hmm.
Why does this happen? Well, very straightforward. The security person is running a vulnerability assessment. These vulnerability assessments say this thingy over here is broken. Go fix that thingy, and then they throw it over the wall. The
Mm-hmm.
reason why the security person is doing that is because, and I'm not trying to sound rude or anything, this is just open honestness. They don't know what they're talking about. If you have any security measure that you are recommending and it is going to break something, that means you do not understand the underlying application, the underlying libraries, understanding packages, and how this application stack is created. There is no security issue that should ever break a system when it's integrated. The only time that you may have an issue is when you're doing a vulnerability assessment that has that's scanning a third party package or library that has a security vulnerability inside of it, because you essentially have three options. You become an open source maintainer for that library package and you fix it.
Mm-hmm.
You accept what it is, or you take it out and you find another way to write that piece of your code. That's really the only time that something could break your application stack. But what ends up happening is a lot of security folks, they'll say, this thingy is broken over here. Go take out that thingy because we have something, something compliance and something, something need and something, something management and something, 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 something. But they don't really know the why. And that really
Mm-hmm.
just goes back to what we were talking about before, where it's like you need to understand what you are securing. If you
Yes.
do not understand the way these things work underneath the hood, you will piss everybody off. That's just what it comes down to. And again, this isn't like me trying to, I'm just really passionate about
Yeah.
this. So like,
Yeah.
I'm like this right now because it
Yeah.
gets me kind of going. And I'm like, this is why we have so many, and this is why we have problems in tech in general. Thinking about security, this is why we have so many
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that
So,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for shedding some light on that. We are coming up on time, and
Yep.
I'm sad because I could just keep asking you so many questions around this. But before we go, do
Yep.
you have any either hot takes or words of wisdom that you want to share with folks?
Yeah. I mean, if I could give anybody in tech, regardless of what direction you go in engineering, help desk, systems administration, virtualization, cloud, DevOps, software, whatever it is, just get really good at what you're trying to do. And this is something that's going to take years. But if you're really good at it, if you're really good at one thing, you'll learn two things. Number one, you'll be able to name your price at any job. Number two, you're going to begin to understand that a lot of this stuff overlaps. And then you'll realize, oh, because I got really good at this one thing, I think I actually understand a little bit of everything. And
Hmm.
it's just going to help you tremendously throughout your career.
Yeah, that is such great advice. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for geeking out with me today. And y'all don't forget to subscribe and be sure to check the show notes for additional resources and to connect with us and our guests on social media. Until next time,
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Vilela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout.